Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. General Hospital, GH spoilers indicate that Gen Sidwell, Carlo Rota, may continue to slide as Port Charles's top villain, as he murders his own son, Marco Rios, Adrian Anchondo, for treason. Marco is playing a hazardous game with his father. Marco conceals the knowledge from his father in order to protect Lucas Jones, Van Hansis, who is aware of their evil plans. Unfortunately, Pascal, Mark Forget, noticed Lucas eavesdropping on a private chat between Marco and his father recently and did not confront Lucas about it. Rather, he ran to Sidwell to tell the beans, and the criminal now has Lucas on his radar. Sidwell isn't a dumb man, either, so on Tuesday, February 24th, he resisted Marco's request that he and Lucas, or at the very least Lucas, leave Windermere. Sidwell even questioned Marco about Lucas knowing anything, which Marco denied. Sidwell probably suspects Marco is aware of Lucas' knowledge of Sidwell's study endeavor. Sidwell is keeping his son out of this situation, obviously to gain an advantage, which suggests he may have revenge plans for Lucas and possibly Marco. While it's difficult to imagine Sidwell would harm his own son, he's as vicious a soap villain as they come. In fact, if GH wanted to continue to portray Sidwell as a threat, destroying his own son's life would ensure it. Sidwell is determined to complete Caesar Faison's, Anders Hove, final assignment, whatever of obstacles, including Marco. Could Sidwell devise a plan to end both Lucas and Marco? Lucas is unlikely to leave the canvas because he is such an important character in Port Charles, but Marco is expendable. GH fans raised an eyebrow a few months ago when casting headshots for the show's fresh characters were posted. However, Marco's was noticeably absent. Professor Henry Hank Dalton, played by Daniel Goddard, was also absent, and the outcome was predictable. Sidwell shot the PCU professor shortly after, effectively ending the character's rule. Will Marco have the same fate? If Sidwell attempts to axe both of them, Lucas will most likely escape, but Marco may become a casualty. However, Marco may receive the same fate as Dalton for his treason, a shot in the chest in the blink of an eye, so only time will tell. General Hospital spoilers suggest that Marco's death would send shockwaves through PC, and Lucas would reel at the loss of his love, so it will be intriguing to see whether the ABC soap pulls the trigger, so to speak, on this type of plot event. In Port Charles's hidden underbelly, where friendships shift like sand and secrets fester in the shadows of magnificent estates like Windermere, Gen Sidwell has emerged as the most calculating and cruel person in recent memory. Sidwell, played with chilling accuracy by Carlo Rota, is no ordinary foe. He sees loyalty as a commodity that can be purchased, blackmailed, or discarded when it no longer suits his purpose. His entrance sparked a surge of intrigue linked to blackmail, experimental medical schemes, and personal vendettas involving some of the show's most adored characters. At the center of his current storm is his own son, Marco Rios, played by Adrian Anchondo, a figure whose divided loyalties have forced him into a deadly corner from which he may never escape. Marco's descent into the abyss began long before he reconnected with his biological father. Marco was raised with bits of a tragic background, including the assumption that Sonny Corinthos was responsible for his mother's death. And he harbored tremendous resentment, which Sidwell brilliantly exploited. When Marco first arrived in Port Charles, his relationship with Lucas Jones, the dedicated doctor and Bobby Spencer's son, appeared to offer a way to repentance and genuine love. Their love, re-established after years apart, felt like a ray of optimism in the midst of mayhem. Lucas, ever the moral compass, believed he could bring Marco out of the shadows. However, as Sidwell tightened his grip, Marco was caught between his father, who promised power and punishment, and his girlfriend, who offered something far more vulnerable, trust and affection. The turning moment occurred when Lucas overheard a conversation that shattered his illusions. Lucas overheard Sidwell and Marco discussing their intentions, which included coercing Dr. Britt Westbourne, whose Huntington's illness had rendered her weak and reliant on Sidwell's experimental medicines. Britt, once a formidable force in her own right, has now become a pawn in Sidwell's game, with her medicine used as leverage to secure cooperation. Marco, who was engaged in this deception, attempted to divert culpability when confronted by Lucas, claiming that Sidwell was the main architect of the threats and that his own involvement sprang from a desire for revenge against Sonny. But the truth was much murkier. Marco had initially opted to support his father, enticed by the promise of family and the appeal of finally having a dad who claimed him unconditionally. As the days progressed into weeks, Marco's internal battle became excruciating. He confessed to Lucas, revealing the scope of Sidwell's operations and his own involvement in them. The revelation was raw, laced with sadness and protestations of love. Marco talked of going away, preferring Lucas above the gloom that has gripped him since moving to Windermere. For a brief period, it seems feasible. Lucas, though shocked, wanted to believe in the guy he loved. He asked Marco to delete any damning evidence and aid in Britt's escape from Sidwell's clutches. Together, they may be able to expose the criminal and escape before the net closes around them. But Sidwell is not a man who tolerates conflicting loyalties. His butler, Pascal, had already noticed Lucas eavesdropping and reported back to his boss with the icy efficiency of someone who understands the repercussions of failure. Sidwell responded quickly and mercilessly. He confronted Marco, asking pointed questions concerning Lucas's awareness. Has Lucas become aware of something he shouldn't? The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Marco sought to downplay the situation by recommending a transfer away from Windermere to safeguard Lucas' hectic hospital schedule, but Sidwell saw through the ruse. He reminded his son of the stakes. Allegiance to family comes first and foremost, especially when that family holds the keys to power, revenge, and survival. Sidwell played hardball, giving veiled threats indicating that Marco's wish to leave was not an option. If Marco dared to favor Lucas, the repercussions would be fatal, not only for himself, but also for the doctor he claimed to love. The tension rose as Marco struggled with an untenable ultimatum. Sidwell made it clear, choose him or watch Lucas die. The words landed like a physical blow. Marco, who had once imagined he could traverse both worlds, now confronted the harsh reality that his father saw betrayal as the ultimate sin. Sidwell believed that blood ties required full obedience. Any hesitation, any suggestion of shifting loyalties, deserved the worst penalty. Marco's burgeoning feelings for Lucas were more than a complication. They posed a threat to Sidwell's power in Port Charles. Sidwell's web was vast, ranging from manipulating political leaders like Willow in Drew's congressional aftermath to blackmailing others. Marco's defection has the potential to completely ruin everything. Whispers of Sidwell's rage spread throughout the community. Jason Morgan, ever diligent in protecting Sonny and those close to him, briefed his old friend on the mounting danger. Jason's harsh assessment, the sooner this guy's dead, the better, reflected the gravity of the situation. Sidwell was more than just a neighborhood thug. He was a calculated operator determined to overcome obstacles, including familial ones. Marco's position got more insecure. Every conversation with Lucas posed a risk of exposure. Every glance toward independence raised suspicions. Pascal's keen eyes missed nothing, and Sidwell's patience became thin. In quiet moments at the hospital, Lucas confided in Britt, sharing Marco's revelations and plotting their escape. Britt, weakened but resolute, realized the threat. She was intimately familiar with Sidwell's harshness, having been subjected to his control over her care. Lucas encouraged others, including Ava Jerome, to avoid Sidwell before getting too involved. But cautions could only go so far when the adversary wielded such power. Marco, meantime, bided his time, hoping to discover an escape that would not involve bloodshed. He adored Lucas, but the pull of his father's influence, of finally belonging to something bigger than himself, collided violently with that feeling. The speculating in Port Charles became heated. Would Sidwell really turn against his own son? The idea sounded unfathomable, but Sidwell had repeatedly demonstrated that sentiment had no bearing on strategy. Marco's betrayal, however minor, was a crack in the foundation. If Marco chose love over loyalty, Sidwell may have little choice but to remove the liability. The villain's downward spiral accelerated. His interactions were more hostile, his threats more blatant. He leaned into conflicts, playing hardball with anyone who dared to disagree, from Willow to those involved in his larger plans. Marco's heart raced at every interaction with his father. He repeated Lucas's requests, the warmth of their shared times starkly contrasted with Sidwell's cold manner. The decision loomed larger every day. To side with Lucas meant contradicting the man who had given him purpose, no matter how warped. To be faithful meant forsaking the one person who recognized the good in him. Sidwell sensed the tremor. His questioning grew sharper, and his manner worsened. In one unsettling encounter, he said unequivocally that family relationships were unbreakable, unless shattered by betrayal. Then they became expendable. As the strain increased, Marco's decisions became desperate. He pondered destroying evidence, confessing to the authorities, or addressing Sidwell directly. However, each path posed a grave risk. Lucas, uninformed of the full scope of the ultimatum, pressed for action, hoping Marco could still change the tide. Their love, which had once provided them with strength, now felt like a noose tightening around them both. Sidwell's rage was not impulsive, but deliberate. He would wait till the right moment, making sure that any elimination appeared to be an accident or the result of the risky games they played. The town held its breath. Jason's threats resonated in the backrooms. Sunny weighed alliances. Britt held out hope for her treatment. And Marco stood on the verge. Knowing that one incorrect step may terminate not just his life, but also the delicate future he had envisioned with Lucas. Sidwell's wicked nature had been revealed. No one, not even his own flesh and blood, was immune to his vengeance when betrayal was involved. In the end, the question remained like smoke over Port Charles. Would Sidwell act on his darkest impulses? Would he condemn Marco for daring to choose love over loyalty? The answer lingered in the uncomfortable silences between father and son, as well as the worrisome looks exchanged by others who realized the storm was ready to break. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. Sidwell's rage would leave scars that would never heal, and Marco's destiny hung on the thinnest of threads in a community where betrayal was often lethal. The afternoon light flowed softly through the hospital windows, leaving long streaks on the polished flooring of General Hospital. Lulu stood at the nurse's station, clutching her phone, her mind racing in circles. So much had changed in such a short period of time. Alliances were strained, secrets had been disclosed, and there was a palpable sense of tension in the air. She sensed him before seeing him. Nathan's steps were measured yet purposeful as he traversed the corridor to her. His jaw tightened, his eyes fastened on her with such intensity that her heart quickened. He had always handled himself with quiet assurance, but tonight was different, more urgent. Lulu, he continued, pausing just inches from her. He pronounced her name quietly and deliberately, cutting through the background noise of hospital banter. We need to talk. Lulu breathed slowly. I figured. They retreated to a quieter place near the elevators, away from prying ears. 4 weeks, they had danced around their emotions, interrupted by commotion, work, and other people's drama. But now that everything was unraveling around them, there was no time for doubt. Nathan did not waste time. I don't want to keep pretending that this is nothing, he told me. It is not. Not to me. Her heart pounded. She had envisioned this conversation countless times, but nothing had prepared her for the raw truth in his gaze. You don't have to say anything if you're not ready, he went on. But I am. I'm done holding back. I want you, Lulu. I have for a long time. Silence stretched between them, heated and vulnerable. Before she could react, the elevator doors slid open with a loud ping. Marco stepped outside, looking over his shoulder as if he expected someone to follow him. His usually confident manner was frayed around the edges. Nathan watched Lulu's focus shift and followed her look. Marco did not see them. He hurried down the corridor, phone close to his ear, his voice muffled yet tense. I told you, I handled it, Marco mumbled. He doesn't know. Nathan's instincts strengthened immediately. Marco rarely appeared rattled, but today he did. Sidwell stood across town, near his office's floor-to-ceiling windows, which overlooked the bay. The river reflected the gray sky above, which appeared tranquil. He carefully placed his drink on the wood desk as one of his guys approached. He made contact, the man explained. But he wasn't alone. Sidwell's expression hardened. Marco has always mistaken arrogance for intelligence. There had been tales of betrayal, documents intercepted, shipments delayed, competitors suddenly one step ahead. Sidwell tolerated a lot of things. Incompetence, on occasion. Disobedience occurs occasionally. But betrayal, never. Back at the hospital, Lulu's mind was torn. Nathan's revelation stayed in her chest like a spark, but Marco's actions concerned her. "I need to know," she murmured, going back to Nathan. "If we do this, if we take this step, are we prepared for everything that will follow?" Nathan did not hesitate. "I don't worry about difficulties. I care about you. I am not claiming it will be simple. Nothing in town is. But I'm not walking away because it's difficult." Lulu examined him closely. She saw no doubt or dread. For once, the turmoil churning around them seemed remote. His words helped her to feel more grounded. "I don't want to keep running from something that feels right," she said quietly. His breath caught. "So don't." A little smile appeared on her lips. "I won't." The moment hovered between them, with unspoken promises and long-buried emotions suddenly coming to the surface. But across town, a storm was brewing. Marco paced inside an isolated warehouse near the docks, the metallic fragrance of ocean and oil permeating the air. He checked his phone again. No response. "You shouldn't be here." The voice sounded from behind him. Marco froze. Sidwell emerged from the shadows, finely dressed as always, but the rage in his eyes was everything but sophisticated. "You've been difficult to reach," Sidwell explained quietly. Marco forced a strained smile. "I've been handling a problem." "So I've heard." The door slammed shut behind Sidwell, and two of his men sealed the exit. Marco swallowed. "You underestimated me," Sidwell admitted gently. "You hoped I wouldn't notice the missing dollars. Leaked information. Delays that benefited my competitors." "It's not what you think," Marco emphasized. Sidwell's lips curved slightly, but there was no humor about it. "That's what they always say." Back at the hospital, Nathan and Lulu took a walk outside for fresh air, ignorant of the impending clash. "I meant what I said," Nathan told her, brushing his palm against hers and interlacing their fingers. "I want a future with you." The simplicity of it, no huge gestures, no theatrical declarations, made it all the more effective. "I'm scared," Lulu confessed. "Every time I let myself be happy, something happens." Nathan gently gripped her hand. "Then we face it together." Her eyes shone slightly. Together. Inside the warehouse, Marco's confidence was eroding. "I can fix this," he replied swiftly. "We can work something out." Sidwell approached, dropping his voice. "You mistake me for someone who negotiates with traitors." Marco's gaze raced to the locked door. "I never betrayed you." "You sold information," Sidwell responded calmly. "You believed you could play both sides and walk away untouched." "I was protecting myself," Marco snapped, desperation pouring through his voice. Sidwell's patience dwindled. "There is no protection from me." The tension in the room grew, suffocating. Marco made a rapid move toward his jacket, but he never got inside. A single shot rang out, deafening the tight room. Back at the hospital, Lulu flinched as a distant thunderclap resonated around the city. Dark clouds had swiftly formed overhead. Nathan drew her closer, automatically. "Storm's coming," he mumbled. She nodded, an unexplained chill running up her spine. Hours later, word started to travel silently in some circles. Marco had vanished. His phone went directly to voicemail. His apartment was empty. Nobody had seen him depart the docks. Sidwell returned to his office, composed once again. The bay below was darker now, with waves churning from the growing wind. One of his men approached with caution. "It's handled." Sidwell nodded once. "Make sure there are no loose ends." "Yes, sir." He returned to the window, watching lightning strike the sky. Betrayal required repercussions. The penalties had been given. At General Hospital, Lulu frowned as she reviewed her texts. Marco was supposed to meet me earlier, she stated. He needed help with something. Nathan stiffened. What do you need help with? He wouldn't say. Nathan's intuition told him that whatever Marco had been involved in wasn't over. Maybe he changed his mind, he said, but he didn't believe it. Lulu seemed uncomfortable. He was afraid, Nathan. I could hear it in his voice. Nathan thought about it carefully. If he was mixed up in something dangerous, chasing it won't help him. I know, she sighed. I just hate not knowing. Nathan cupped her face tenderly. We will find out. But just now, don't let this tear us apart before we start. She leaned into his touch to ground herself. I'm not running, she stated firmly. He smiled. Good. Across town, sirens sounded faintly near the docks. A wayward dockworker stumbled onto something he wasn't supposed to find. News would arrive soon enough. By dawn, the city was buzzing with speculation. By lunchtime, rumors of foul play would circulate. And by dusk, individuals would begin to connect the dots. In his office, Sidwell seemed unconcerned. In public, he would share his concerns. Regret. Shock. He would even offer assistance with the search. In private, however, he felt only satisfaction. Nobody deceived him. No one. As dawn broke, Lulu stood by the hospital window again, coffee still in her hands. Nathan approached her quietly. There's talk about the docks, he remarked cautiously. Police activity. Her stomach sank. Marco. It's possible. She closed her eyes briefly to absorb the weight of it. This town, she muttered. It never changes. Nathan wrapped one arm around her shoulders. We cannot control the darkness that surrounds us, but we may select what we keep. She gazed up at him. And I'm choosing you, he said softly. Emotion rushed through her. Fear lingered, of loss, violence, and the unknown, but underneath it was something more stable. Hope. She reached up and gently kissed him, securing the promise neither of them wanted to break. Detectives in the city were piecing together the pieces of Marco's final hours. Sidwell was already plotting his next move elsewhere, his rage temporarily satisfied but far from quenched. And in the midst of it all, Nathan and Lulu stood on the verge of a new beginning, knowing that loving each other in a city ruled by secrets and vengeance would never be easy. But, for the first time in a long time, neither of them was willing to let fear control their destiny. Outside, the storm started to pass. The clouds thinned.